We
Good deal.
we got Harry Brown, the Senate Majority Leader, here live with us, and also Representative Brian Brown from Pitt County. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good to have you both. We are at the legislature this morning. We're actually across the street at the Daily Planet Cafe. This is kind of where people come over in the morning, get their coffee, and then head back to meetings. And we are continuing our coverage of the legislature now. And again, I want to say special thanks to our sponsors this morning. Going to get Ray McKeithen back on in a minute. Potash Corp Aurora, one of our sponsors today, along with Vidant Health. In fact, Dr. Dave Herman and Jay Briley are here from Vidant Health this morning. We're going to talk to them as well. And the Speaker of the House, Tom Tillis, will be joining us here in just a few minutes as well. Let's talk to some of the legislators. We're up to about DEFCON 2 with a budget, probably, something like that. Senator Brown, what do you think? The Senate version of the budget is out, the House version is out, and now it's just a matter of you guys getting into a room and arm wrestling for about 2 weeks.
That's pretty much how it works sometimes, you know. I think for us as appropriation chairs, I think there's two big pieces we've got to work out first. I think one is Medicaid and the other is the lottery piece that the House put in their budget, because that kind of dictates how revenues will start, because you got to fix those two pieces first. And after we get those worked out, I think then we can move on with the process.
Would it be fair to say, and I'll bring in Representative Brown on this, would it be fair to say that the most controversial piece of the Senate budget was the cutting of the 6,000 teacher assistants? The most controversial part of the House budget, Representative Brown, is the projections that there will be more lottery money, which will be available to help with school teacher raises. And a lot of folks are beginning to question it. The governor just questioned it here just a second ago, saying he thinks that the House budget the expectations are too high about that. What's the latest on that?
Well, yeah, I would definitely agree with you that those are probably the two biggest sticking points in the education budget would be, you know, the cuts that the Senate's made to the TAs and certainly the projections on what we're looking to do with the lottery funds from the House side. You know, these guys will get in the room and knock it out. I wish that I could be in that room with them to try to move forward. You know, I support what we've done with the House budget, trying to be creative with revenue sourcing. You know, as I've told folks in our caucus and those that have asked, I don't support the lottery as an ideological concept, but the reality is it's a law of the land. We as a legislature have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that the net proceeds of lottery are as high as possible and used for the appropriate funds, which is education. We've seen our counterparts across the aisle not do that in the past. You know, we've seen $28 million go to cap some holes in the Medicaid budget. That's not what the lottery was intended for. We are moving forward with an education lottery, and we're trying to make sure that the proceeds from it are as high as possible to fund, you know, the things that we need in the state.
And thereby,
Henry, I totally disagree.
I was going to say, thereby are the differences between the two chambers. You just heard two totally different points of view. See, this is turning into point counterpoint. I love it. Senator Brown, I presume you want to respond to that.
I do. In the Senate budget, the lottery dollars are spent just a few ways, and it's all on education, none on HHS. It's spent on school construction for the counties, $100 million. You've got for scholarships for the UNC system, and you've got teacher pay. That's how those dollars are spent on the Senate side. On the House side, you've got a piece that funds pre-K education that is in Health and Human Services. So they took it out of education and spent $49 million under Health and Human Services to fund pre-K. So if we're going to talk about moving money out of education into Health and Human Services, that's what the House budget did. Plus, the House budget also spends over $100 million in additional revenue on the come, saying that if we double advertising, we're going to generate over $100 million in additional revenue, and at the same time, they put restrictions on how you can advertise. And I think the lottery folks will tell you they cannot generate those dollars with those restrictions.
Well, point of clarification, I wasn't talking about the Senate budget taking money and you know, capping those Medicaid shortfalls. I was actually talking about our Democratic counterparts. But I truly believe that the reality is that, Henry, you know this as well as anyone. Advertising increases revenue. That's just the way business works. We firmly believe that.
I hope it does.
The Honest Lottery Act that was Representative Skip Stam's legislation that was passed last year, you know, the projections that the lottery gave us last year was actually the Honest Lottery Act would assist increasing revenues with the lottery as well through that Honest Lottery Act. So I definitely think there's some conflicting views coming out of the Lottery Commission since this last week or so. But, I definitely think we have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure those net proceeds are as high as possible.
It does point out, you guys can argue about that forever, and you probably will over there across the street. But the reality of it is, it does point out the situation that we're in trying to find new revenues. Nobody's going to stand for a tax increase. But I will say this, everybody's trying to get creative when it comes to finding new revenues. So you kind of have to hand it to the House for that. It sounds like those numbers are going to have to be tweaked, though, Representative Brown. Would you allow that?
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. It sounds like that's going to be the case. So we'll just wait to see. I don't know if you've got another word about that,
Well, I
Harry,
would just say that we've got our staff that's looking to really try to pinpoint what those numbers will be if you double the advertising dollars. I think when we get those exact numbers, then I think we'll have a number hopefully we can work with.
I think
it's probably going to be about half, though, what the House had.
From the very beginning, the whole advertising strategy with the lottery has seemed kind of ridiculous to me. It's always been a situation where we want to advertise it, but we don't want to encourage people to play it. I mean, it's kind of, the state. I mean, let's be honest, guys. The state has talked out of both sides of its mouth on that issue for years, has it not?
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about some other things. Senator Brown, you'll be on as the Appropriations Chair and the Senate Majority Leader. You'll be in the room for the budget negotiations. When do you think it's going to start? When do you think the conference committee will start its work?
Today we're going to work on the Medicaid piece and on the lottery piece to see if we can get some type of consensus. I think as soon as we get that done, I think the process will move pretty quickly. So I think it'll be next week, honestly, before we really get into trying to work out the differences.
Right. Senate Majority Leader Senator Harry Brown from Onslow County. I've said this before. Senator Brown is the only person in a leadership role in the state of North Carolina now east of Raleigh, when you think about it. So you're carrying the burden of the East on your back, Senator Brown.
Well, I do have Senator Rabin from Brunswick County, who is also in a leadership position on the Senate side.
But not as high as you.
Not quite.
All right, and Brian Brown from Pitt County. One of the issues, of course, that we're all very concerned about, and we want to talk to Senator Brown about this as well, is medical school funding. I know that's been a big issue in recent days and weeks, and people at East Carolina on pins and needles. I was happy to hear the governor. He has been very supportive and gotten in the middle of this thing. He kind of now understands that East Carolina does not own a hospital. Much different situation than UNC Chapel Hill. So give us the latest on that, where you think some of those funding issues might go and where we're hoping they'll go.
Well, we really need to talk to Senator Brown about that, as the House budget obviously is over there, and we're looking for something to come out of conference. We've worked really hard to try to educate everyone in regards to UPL, and particularly SODCA, and the significance financially it is to the East. I think we've made a lot of headway, but there's still a lot of work to be done. I think that there's just some ideological differences of how those things need to be done, how they need to be funded, and some of the assessments that need to be retained. I credit House leadership for being willing to listen, come to the table, and try to assist us in talking to some of the other leaders, and hopefully we can achieve something that's positive to try to help with what is the financial jewel of the eastern part of our state.
There have been two big issues that have really put East Carolina in a little bit of a bind with the medical school. One has been the UPL, the upper payment limit for doctors that work in state-owned med schools, and this what they call the SODCA Act, which is a debt set-off, which allows the med school to collect bad debt from folks by garnishing their tax returns and garnishing lottery winnings and those kind of things. And the Senate has been a little bit harder on that. Senator Brown, where do you guys stand on that now? East Carolina is very concerned about that.
Well, I think the position the Senate took last year is you had two hospitals basically that could do that. The rest could not. And I think the leadership felt like it was a fairness issue more than anything else. You either let them all do it or you let nobody do it. And because it was only two that could do it, the decision was let's let no one do it. And was that the right strategy? I'm not sure, to be quite honest. I think we're talking about that again. But that was the thought process. last year.
But it's not the hospital, it's the medical school.
That's right,
The
the medical
hospital
school.
isn't able to do that.
That's right.
Yeah, just to clarify that.
Sure.
All right, so you think there's a chance for some movement on that? in
I
this?
think possibly, and,
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that.
But as far as the budget goes, I'll just tell you the strategy and the difference between the House and the Senate on the budget. Since 2011, the state has spent about $1.5 billion more in Medicaid. And year after year, we pass a Medicaid budget, and every year we come back, it's $400 million over budget. And what that has meant is you keep cutting education, you keep cutting JPS, you cut every other area of state government to pay for Medicaid. And I think our HHS chairs felt like this year that education needed to be important. And they wanted Medicaid to, for one time, live up to its budget. And so I think that's why they started looking at different ways to find dollars to balance that budget that was in place and find savings within HHS to pay for Medicaid. And that was the theory behind, what our subcommittee chairs did on HHS. And I understand what it has done to East Carolina. I mean, I've been following this, and I've been talking to our subcommittee chairs, and I think they understand it as well. And I think there'll be some negotiations on that front. But I think it was more, as much of a situation of putting folks on notice that it cannot continue on the path it's continuing on.
Right.
Which something has got to change. And I think
Well,
that was
I
the
think-
message we tried to get out.
I think you've made that message
Yeah.
loud and clear, and we hope that things will change with Medicaid also. We just hope that you guys don't damage our medical school in the process. So please help us over there.
But I understand, but, just to give you an idea, to not make those cuts on the House side, the House cut the university system $50 million. About $10 million of that goes to East Carolina, so East Carolina takes the $10 million
That's
hit.
true, Representative Brown.
We didn't do that.
true,
So,
Representative
that's the give and take you got to do.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
and those things were fought for. But I have to respond if I could for a moment, just for the medical school funding and Vidant funding as it pertains to what was being said. Absolutely, we're seeing the difficulty with managing and projecting Medicaid. No arguments there whatsoever. My question is both to House leadership and Senate leadership as we kind of look forward to what has taken place with the assessment to the outpatient physicians, particularly affecting Vidant Medical Center. Back in 1993, we had an agreement by the state of North Carolina that came to then Pitt County Memorial Hospital and said, we would really like for you to step up and really assist us with funding the medical school and the residency program. And without question, Pitt Memorial Hospital said, absolutely, but we're going to need a little more assistance. And at that point, they gave them 100% Medicaid reimbursement, allowing for further federal dollar drawdown. We're now reducing that to 70%, making an enormous hit to Vidant Medical Center. So the question is are we going to now start appropriating more dollars to the medical school to try to cover what is the best private-public partnership in the state of North Carolina? Furthermore, with SOTCA, I think it was a really poor decision. This is the state's dollars. And to that point, if it's an all or nothing, I would hope my colleague would support a bill that would not allow any state agency then to be able to take advantage of SOTCA, because SOTCA, the Set-Off Debt Collection Act, actually pertains to every single state agency in the state of North Carolina. So singling out just the two university systems, I think, was a fundamental flaw in the policy.
Fair argument.
Yeah.
I
And
think
one of the
it just
arguments
shows.
one of the arguments has been with SOTCA, Senator Brown, is that it's not tax money.
Right.
It's not something that's going to cost taxpayers anything. So we hope that you'll help us with that.
I promise you I have spoken to my HHS chairs. I'll leave it at that.
I will keep banging the drum. I will keep
I'm
banging
not
the
sure
drum.
that was a commitment.
Not a,
Well,
listen-
it's part of the negotiations, I'm sure. And,
No.
and I do understand.
We need you in the East, Senator Brown. Come on.
I do say this. I think that Vidant does get rolled into what UNC has as a like entity, which it is not.
There's a
and
lot of-
and I
there's
do
a lot of
think that a lot of
differences.
people don't understand that.
I
And
think-
that is,
That's
and I
true.
think Brian will say that's true on the House
Without
side
question,
as well.
without question, and
Yeah.
that's why I said
Yeah.
House leadership as well as Senate
Yeah.
leadership. I hope that, but you guys have been great at your willingness to come to the table and listen and try to help us
Right.
to solve these issues.
Well, that's what will be happening in the next 2 weeks. You hear the differences. I've said before, I'm not sure the Senate and the House have ever been this far apart starting the budget negotiations. We hope you can make a deal.
Just think it's a short session and we're only tweaking the budget.